Good morning, Turks and Caicos. Welcome to First Edition. I'll just put this out there right now. Our late start has nothing to do with our guest and nothing to do with me. So you figure it out.
Wow.
But we want to wish you a good morning. Hi, Shivago. Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I just want to apologize to everyone for the late start. I do take full responsibility. This very small, jolly man that led to it this morning. But Eli, I hope you have a good day at school, buddy.
Yes, Eli, we're really glad that you're feeling better. So, our guest this morning is none other than, instead of a Grand Turk man, we get a South Caicos man in the house this morning.
The streak continues.
Yes. So, we'd like to say a very pleasant good morning to the Honorable E.J.Saunders. I would say Irvin J., but he has this brand. Yeah, he's the Honorable E.J.Saunders. Honorable Saunders, morning, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Just to let you know, I'm going to claim Grand Turk also. So.
Oh, good. There you go.
There you go, doing so well. You're doing so well.
Thank you.
He's
Thank
an
you.
all-island candidate, so he has to say things
yes,
like
yeah,
this.
but he lives in Grand Turk, Yeah. Okay.
So
So, Honorable EJ, tell us, what have you been doing lately?
What I've been doing lately.
Yeah.
Just get it right. Just get it right. I think Shivago wants to ask that question.
No.
Shivago really wants to come out there and ask me in a way. Well, I've been, I headed up the appropriations committee, so that ate up a week. We had the budget that ate up a week. Also, in between the time in February, not February, in March, I ended up getting dengue, and so that ate up 2 weeks. So 4 weeks out of the last maybe 6 or 7 weeks was eaten up by either doing government work or having dengue and recovering from it. But there are a few weeks in between that, the 1 or 2 weeks in between that, I've been working on my own private companies. And 2 of them, they're tech companies. They have big announcements coming up. One is going to have a big announcement coming up on the 6th of next month of May. And so the news and the press release and everything is already done. But that's going to be embargoed until the 6th because we're going to do our North American and Asian and Caribbean press launch all in one go, and we don't want it to come out here and then all of a sudden it goes out. So we're announcing that. So you'll see news around that. That company is called Kairos. I'm the chairman of that company, and then you have a DSS company that is another company of mine. We have something that I need to do for tomorrow morning. Some big things with that. So by the time I finish here, I have to go back to that to make sure that I make the deadline for tomorrow morning. But that's another great story that I'm happy with. So private life, government life, and then 2 weeks of sickness ate up my time.
Since you mentioned being chair of the Appropriations Committee, let's talk about that, because we've asked a few of our guests who were here before you that people said this year the Appropriations Committee was so very detailed and informative. Was that something planned, or was that a strategy, or it just happened that way, or that's how you elicited information from the departments?
Well, first of all, I'm a bit surprised that you actually had people on before me talking about the Appropriations Committee. I feel like I'm coming at the end. I'm not just joking.
We saved the best for last.
The thing about this is that I've been in business for a while. I've been on audit committees. I've been in front of audit committees. And I know what it feels like to be in it, and so and being the chair, when I didn't have a lot of experience being on the Appropriations Committee, and so I didn't sit in on many of them. But what I did was took it and then applied it to what I thought an audit committee would be like in the business world. And when you come into an audit committee, most times both of you have to be, whether you're in front of the audit committee or you're the audit committee, everyone is as well detailed because they've gone through it, and then most times when you're there, it feels like the principal's office, and it's because something went wrong, and so you're taught to be that detailed. Whether you're in front of the audit committee or whether you're sitting on it, you want to go through the details. So I applied that experience to the Appropriations Committee, and when I got the budget and everything, I actually went through every single page. First time, as I said it before. Wow. That I went through every page. I was referencing things back to the, and so I made a lot of notes. So I went in there, detailed, and then there are other members who did that also. But I think once we got into a groove, people started feeding off of each other, and then after went into the second day, people started reviewing it. So I think it's if it was raised up a level, it was just because we all got into a groove and started feeding off each other. But I'm a very detailed person. I want to see every number. I want to know how it ties into each other. So when I speak to it, I can then speak to it intelligently.
So we talked about the Appropriations Committee and you being the chairperson and it being different this year. Me, myself, and others, including Cheryl, have talked about it resembling even like the House audit or the Senate audit, where they go through the expenditures and persons have to justify. So you talk about the level of preparation, not just the person's presenting their budget, but the person scrutinizing it. And do you see us moving forward taking that approach, and then obviously the benefits of it, making sure persons have the kind of budget that could withstand a fiscal year?
Well, the truth of the matter is that if you follow the standing orders, and we never follow it exactly, and not that we break it, it's that there are protocols for being able to break it. And but if you follow the standing orders, the budget needs to be laid 6 weeks before it's debated. So it gives you enough time. And what should have happened is that the Appropriations Committee should have had a day per ministry. So you're not trying to squeeze 4 and 5 ministries in. And so you could start at 10, you could probably finish at 4 in the afternoon with the questions, and then you can prepare your recommendations and your notes. And even when that's done, you should have maybe 2 or 3 weeks to have to present the report, so the MPs can go through it and they can have a much more informed budget debate. But I can't say lately, from the time I've been in government, it's been the same thing. It's been compressed, where the day it's done, the next day, or maybe done on a Friday, and Monday all of a sudden you're having a budget debate. That's far too short. And I think, my recommendation is that going forward, that the Appropriations Committee should have at least 2 weeks to go through all of its questions, so you're not up until midnight. And then you have at least a week to be able to properly prepare the report. And so the report reflects what came out of the meeting. I don't think our report reflected what came out of the meeting, because we had so much material to try to put into the report within a very short period of time. It just wasn't able to do it. But the proper thing is to lay the budget 6 weeks before the other thing, give the Appropriations Committee its time to be able to do its work and prepare its report, give the MPs their time to be able to go through the budget based on the Appropriations Committee report. And so then you can have a very good informed budget debate.
If you're just joining us, this is First Edition, and we have the Honorable Hon.Saunders here in the studio with us. I'm going to change the subject a little bit. Honorable Saunders, you were our first Minister of Health under this administration. You've been the Minister of Finance. You've been Deputy Premier. What would you say are those indelible marks you've left on those ministries?
I was first trying to think of a joke at first. But the thing about it is, if we take Ministry of Health, when I became minister, and I came in on the day we got sworn in as ministers, we were in the middle of COVID. And I don't have a medical background. And I remember someone saying to me, a friend of mine calling up and saying, okay, you get Ministry of Health. One thing not to do is resign, because they said a lot of ministers of health, who were even doctors and stuff, were resigning throughout the Caribbean, because it was such a stressful time. And the day we won the election, got sworn in, the governor was talking about how COVID cases was starting to increase. And that was on the 28th of February. The governor was saying it, or 20th of February, that it was things that. So when I became minister, the cases were increasing. The vaccine was out, but we were below 50%, and they wanted to get it to a number. We didn't know exactly what the number is to get herd mentality. And so coming and having all of these things that we were trying to achieve, all of these KPIs, and we didn't even know that what it would be, but we just know that we had to get to a certain point. And and someone needed to become the face of that. Someone needed to become the face of saying, make sure you get home early, wear your mask, even though I was wearing my mask around my wrist a lot of the time. But take the vaccine, do these things to get the COVID numbers down. And but I stuck with it. But the good thing about it is that I used my background, my science and engineering background, and look at it and says, okay, the 28 positivity rate is driven by this. So if we do these things, we can get that down. The COVID cases, people get COVID doing this. And if we do these things, we can get it down. And then that's why I would go out there with charts and on the screen and say to people, if you work with me, we can get the vaccination rate here. We can get the positive cases down here, the 28 positivity rate over here. And the public, for the most part, bought into it, and we got COVID down to 0. And we got the vaccination rate up high. and we got the CDC to move us from a level 4 to a level 1. So the fact that I was able to be the face of the COVID time period and being able to bring comfort to the public for the most part, and get people to take the vaccine who probably would not wanted to take it, and to get the numbers down to a manageable level where, because we didn't open up the country when we came into government, but certainly we blew the doors open because of the way we were managing COVID, and that allowed us to get back to record level of tourism. And so I think the mark on that would have been, how I became the face of getting people to do the best practices around COVID.
And finance?
We did a number of things in finance. I mean, I articulated before we came into government that we would try to get to 400 million in revenue during this term, and I said we will get to 500 million next term. And people would say, oh, but every year the budget increases. But you remember, we were at 290 million COVID numbers. 318 was the best the country had done before that, and fiscal year 18 and 19. So to go and say that we were going to basically add $100 million in new revenue with no taxes in 4 years was an ambitious target. We're not talking about growing 2% year on year. And we now just delivered a budget revenue-wise now of 465 million coming from 290 million. And now I think that we can do 600 million. And so to be able to articulate it and then say this is how we're going to move the country towards it. And then I also said that that if we get to 400 million, all of the good things that civil servants can get. And so while I didn't do the pay and grading review, the fact is that when we got there, we knew that we could do it, because the deputy governor would come and say, DP, I need $15 million for this. And I'm like, okay, we have it. Then she came back and said we need like 18 million, but it was there. And what people don't appreciate is that if we didn't have the money, we couldn't do it. We would have had to phase it in over time. But the fact that the money was there, the fact that the money was there, that we were able to do that. And I think the problem that the country has is that the country is making more money than they can spend. Now, there are reasons for that, but the fact is that we have more difficulties getting projects out. The flip side would have been is that you would be a country that'd be so ambitious, but you don't have the revenue. Like, man, I want to do this, but I don't have the money to build schools. I don't have the money to build roads. That's not our problem. Our problem is that the money is there, but we can't get those things moved. And so that was one. And I think the other most important thing is that we had the Vision 2040 document. That was the vision, the aspirations set by Turks and Caicos Islanders of where they wanted the country to be between the year 2020 to 2040. And it was a final draft, but it didn't tie back to the budget. So what would have happened is that we would have gotten to 2040 still having the document and realizing most of the aspirations wasn't achieved. And so one of the things I said was that what we would do is that the Vision 2040 document is a 20-year document. We took the medium-term development strategy, which I marked up and aligned to the Vision 2040 document. And so the medium-term development strategy would have been a 4-year document. So it would look at the Vision 2040 and pull out the aspirations in 4-year chunks. So say the first 4 years we're going to do this. The next 4 years we're going to do that. The next 4 years we're going to do this. And then I took the FSPS, which is a yearly document, which is done on the budget year, and pulled out the aspirations from the medium-term development strategy on a yearly basis. That's why if you go to the budget booklet, you would see Vision 2040 and how, which you are doing, how it ties back to the Vision 2040 document. And so now when people are making budgetary decisions, it ties all the way back to the Vision 2040 document.
That's more realistic.
Which means that by 2040, you would be able to look back and say, we've achieved these things. And so that alignment will ensure the things that the people said that they wanted for the Turks and Caicos. What Turks and Caicos Islanders say they want, their aspirations are being delivered on regardless of who the government is. And I think that was a big achievement. And I think redoing the PFM, the Public Financial Management Framework, which came out, I spoke about it during the thing, it came out of a time when the country was under austerity measures, and we're not there. And I don't want to say modernize it, because it wasn't, I don't think it's even where we needed to be, but it's certainly a big improvement from what we had. And to be the person who picked that up, looked at it and say, this isn't right, and mark it up and then send it back for renegotiations. I thought those are the main things would be for me.
So I want to highlight that because you mentioned a little bit previously when you were talking about your tenure as the Minister of Finance with us making more money than we have the ability to spend, and then you even mentioned the PFM. So as the Minister of Finance, I mean, we've dealt with this now since the suspension of our Constitution, the institution of the interim administration, and there's some of these rigid expenditure methods or hurdles that we have to go through just to spend money. So as the Minister of Finance, understanding that we're in a completely different financial position that we are, and even though different socioeconomic position, obviously we had the shroud of corruption around us at the time, but you know, we're talking about over a decade removed from this time period. We're talking about us making $500 million, presenting a $500 million budget annually. Well, it was close, maybe with the supplementary, we'll get there. Yeah. But the idea is we're a completely different individual. We always use the example of a teenager living with their parents. So maybe we had to move in with our parents because our finances weren't straight. Right. We weren't doing really well. We were depressed. We're struggling with maturity. But now we're an adult. We make very good money. We practice great financial habits. Why does the PFM still exist in reality? Why isn't there more, just more independence in terms of not just the Minister of Finance, but all our ministers when it comes to spending government funds in order to achieve these goals, especially budgetary goals? And as the Minister of Finance, I mean, you talk about scratching up the PFM, but I mean, was the hope eventually to do away with this procedure altogether? Well,
the thing about it is that I probably wouldn't want to see the PFM go completely away because it creates best practices, and the best practices came out of the us being in austerity measures. So think of it this way: you get sick, and then the doctor says you got to eat healthier because you've got diabetes, and then you're eating healthy and you're starting to feel better, and you go, well, I want to go back to doing the bad things. They say, well, no, you shouldn't. You probably should stick with eating healthier. But the fact is that these things have like targets, they got ceilings, they got flaws, and means like you can only spend up to this amount with approval. So I think those things needed to be moved. I think the best practices as a framework should be in place, but I think the autonomy and the levels of autonomy that you had should be removed. And because it doesn't make for agile government, it doesn't make for agile decision making. There are even things that the government wants to make, and they say, well, there's no provision for it. The only provision for it is to give emergency powers to the governor, so the governor can make those decisions. Otherwise, you got to go through all of these hoops. And I think those are the things need to recognize that we have huge amount of savings. It doesn't do anyone any good to be ending the financial year with $50 million, $60 million in surpluses, and there's a number of projects can't move. You know, their projects being stalled. And the people, the decision, I won't say decision makers, but the people who sign off on it, technically it's not their problem. You know, some people may get offended, but if you're an MP in the UK and your constituency has problems and you're looking for a re-election, you're not really worried about whether or not Leeward Highway got done, to be honest. Let me be honest. Only thing you want to be worried about is to say, make sure that the budget goes through, that there's no corruption, anything else, but you're not really worried that those roads getting fixed. Okay? And then when it comes to you to say we want to change the ceiling, the only thing they see is, wait a minute, this was the old policy, this is the new policy, there's a major changes, why do they want to change it? What's going on down there? When you'd be thinking, listen, the projects are not moving. One of the things I think need to happen, though, people will completely disagree with me, is that I think they should let ministers be part of the negotiating team. Because the way is that you mark it up, you say you want this, it goes to the technocrats. They speak among themselves, and I think they're driven by different agendas from a minister's agenda. And so they negotiate among themselves, and they come back and they take it to the ministers to really sign off. So the minister over there looks at it and yeah, I'm happy. The minister over here like, oh, I'm happy, and then they sign off. But particularly from the private business world, I want to be able to negotiate it because I believe that if I achieve 50% of what I want with other people negotiating on my behalf, I think if I negotiate on my behalf, we're going to get 75% or 80%. Because but I think we have to get through that. It's a whole cultural change because that's just how the protocol is. You say this is what you want, it passes off to other people. But unless that person is carrying your passion your desire. And again, they're driven by something different. You know, I don't think you're going to get far fast. You know, and for me, I want to get farther faster than just sitting there and waiting for things to happen over an evolutionary time period.
So what kind of conversation needs to be held, and whom with, to make sure that ministers are at the table negotiating?
Independence. Sorry, you're asking him.
Yeah, I mean, Shivago's right. You know, I mean, it's true, because the thing about this is that I've had very, like, detailed conversations with the minister for the overseas territories, because I happened to be filling in for the premier at CARICOM, and he was there when he became it. And we just happened to meet at a cocktail party. The next day or 2 days later, when we were traveling, we happened to be in the airport, the concierge room together, the VIP section together, and so we spent a lot of time. And by the time he came to the Turks and Caicos, even at one point when he was negotiating with the overseas territories on something, well, not good negotiating, but discussing, I sat next to him because he didn't want to be on the side of the table by himself. And I was thinking to myself, this is great, because I'm sitting next to the minister that's in charge of the overseas territories. But what ends up happening is that he's got a team just like how we have a team. And even though he understands politician to politician, none of us can really make that happen, because the way it works, just like I said, the protocol of the way it works, and the culture of it is that you pass it off to your team, and your team negotiates. But it's a little bit different for me, coming from the private sector. And I know people keep reminding me that the government is not the private sector. But when you're negotiating the private sector, you're heading up that negotiation. You know, unless it's below you. But if it's important enough, you're the person involved and sitting in the room and negotiating. But I find that in politics, most times the politicians are you say what you want, and then you come back in the room and things are wrapping up for the signing and everything. But the tough negotiations, you know, happens, you know, behind it. Yeah.
You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll step away from the finance, the TFM, because I don't think it's going to end up in an independence conversation. Considering your new role, you're further away from that discussion. So let's talk about your new role. So you've been, CF mentioned that you've been the Minister of Health, where you've touted your success there. You also talk about your contribution.
I talked about my record.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Your record. Well, your record does all the talking, apparently, as the Minister of Finance,
as it should,
and the Deputy Premier. So how do you contribute now in your new role without an executive position or a cabinet portfolio? How do you continue to have your record speak for you in a different capacity? And I was very kind in the way I presented that.
Well, you can present it. You can present it.
I actually wanted to ask him. Yeah.
You can present. You can
You've
present.
done better than that. Okay, good.
You can
Let's be more direct.
Listen,
There you
you
go.
can present it how you want to present it,
no.
because you know I can take it. My shoulders are
Yes.
wide. I'll just laugh it off. I wouldn't get insulted, and I think it would make for good ratings, because
Yeah.
people say, "Hey, you saw."
Salacious.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not first edition.
So, but the thing about it is that as I tell people, what happened isn't the worst thing in the world, to be honest. I mean, I think it's far worse that you're leading the country and you think you're doing well, and you wake up on an election day and the public doesn't vote you back in, you know, and so you completely don't have a job, and not just the job thing, your vision of where you was heading is just taking a break for 4 years, maybe 5 years. And so it's not the end of the world. I know people look, oh my goodness, you got you got fired and set to the back bench. That's politics. If you can't take that, then you wouldn't be able to deal with politics. Okay, so you don't get too emotionally involved with it. And I say that to say that it sets your frame mind, your state of mind, how you frame mind. It sets how you deal with things. So I moved from the and I'm going to pause there and use like a football analogy and sports analogy. If you're the starting quarterback and you have a bad day and they bench you, your job isn't to go out there and badmouth the person who goes in after you. You know, you need to cheer them on. And then when you get your time back to go back there, you play better. You have to perform. And so, you know, so it sets your frame, like I said, sets your frame of mind. When I went to the back bench, when the premier and I had our first conversation, he said, "I want you to chair the appropriations committee," and I said, "You sure you want to do that?" And he said, "Yes." I didn't take it as an insult. Some people sort of like, "Oh my goodness, why did you accept it?" For me, it's like, okay, you want me to do the appropriations committee? I'll do the best job that I can on the appropriations committee and learn while I'm there. And so one day, then the premier called me. The premier and I had our first conversation on a Monday. On Tuesday, we went to the TCI Finance Limited launch, and he called me up. He messaged me and said, "Are you coming?" And I was like enjoying lunch, and I run and go run home, change, and come to it. And he said, "I'm here. I want EJ to speak." And I spoke. And then he said to me, "Can you come to Grand Trunk tomorrow to help out with the national ID?" And I did. And I think some people took it wrong because they saw the dynamic like we should have been angry with each other. But I wasn't angry with him about it, and we've got a job to do. We want to win the election. We're on the same party, and we have to be aligned. And like I said, these things will happen in politics. We may be one day our party will probably go back into the opposition, and then we're going to have to deal with that. But if you get angry every time there's a step back and you freeze up, you're not going to really get anything done at all. And that's not the personality. That's not the personality to have. There's a learning exercise with being in the backbench. I understand now what the backbenchers go through. There are things that I could possibly fix while we're at the backbench. There's a lot of things that we could make backbenchers' life easier and allow them to be more effective.
For example?
Well, the thing about it is that I truly believe that the House of Assembly should be open 24/7 to MPs and staff. So you could have a security in there, and then you could go because you want to do work. When I was doing the appropriations committee, I had to go back to the hotel. The lighting is off, the internet is sketchy.
It's not
when I'm working in the report, I could have gone back there at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I should be able to go into the library and be able to work. I think backbenchers should have a certain amount of staff also. As I told them, when you get to the airport, ministers jump in their vehicles, they go to their office, they can get their stuff done. Backbenchers are looking around like, okay, who has the car? Four of us are sharing a car and stuff. And I told them, for the amount of times you have House meetings and the amount of days the House meetings go for and the amount of MPs you have, if you give each one of them a car, it'll cost the government less than $10,000. I don't mean their own car. I mean when they a rental for when they come. It makes it easier for them to get their stuff done. Instead of having 2 and 3 persons per car, sharing a car and stuff like that. For less than $10,000, you can make them more efficient. For the cost of a security person at the House of Assembly, 24/7 at nighttime, where if you're an MP or you're a staff of it, you can go back to the House of Assembly and work throughout the night. We're talking about maybe another 50, 60, less than $100,000 all in for the type of staff you need. Those little things could make policymakers' job easier because when you come to the House and you debate a bill, you want to be the most informed. You don't want to be flipping through it during the debate. You want to be able to say, listen, I was there last night, I was in Grand Trunk last night, I was able to go back after dinner, 8, 9 o'clock back to the House of Assembly office and work and then get over the curb. But the backbenchers didn't feel empowered to be able to say, this is what we need, and I'm insisting that this is what we need. My personality and the fact that I was deputy premier could come back and say, guys, this is what we need. I don't really care what you say. We're going to put something in the budget for this next time, and I'm going to insist that this thing happen because we're going to raise the standard. And so, but I would not have been able to see like this thing sucks. You're standing around the airport.
The other side.
Like you can't get anything done like this. And so, being there now, I'm like, you know what? I can go and rent, my own car, but does that for the next person? Does it make it easier for the next person? I can buy a printer. But does it make it easier for the next person? And so my goal is that while I'm here, that this is the last time you're going to have backbenchers standing around at the airport, sometimes 4 persons sharing a car, And then I know people are going to say, well, there was some recommendations made and it had to go to the Integrity Commission and it has to come to Cabinet to be. I don't really care about all of that. Okay, only thing I care about is results. It's results. And that's.
You talked about your record, Hon.Saunders, and I've seen in comments on social media that we're in this silly season, and we know that elections are coming. The EJ brand seems quiet. While I see a lot of MPs accelerating their visibility, I've seen named candidates now, upcoming candidates, being visible, and we're hearing from them. Are you campaigning?
Well, I would say this: I think the things that I've done, my record, as I said, I think my record speaks for itself. The things that I've done should campaign for me. I think that when the campaign kicks off, I could point to those things. As an example, I was working really hard on updating the real estate and brokerage license bill, making it very, very pro Turks and Caicos Islanders, and a lot of people in Turks and Caicos Islanders who are in the real estate sector were excited by it. They were very excited by it. In tandem, we had just wrapped up the negotiations for the consultation around the business licensing ordinance. The amendments that, which is very pro Turks and Caicos friendly. People who sat in those meetings saw that. As a matter of fact, it came to cabinet in December, but I sent it back because it wasn't, I think just by oversight, it wasn't containing the categories of businesses that I had recommended to be moved, some under restricted and some under reserve, but certainly a lot of them I had moved to reserve for Turks and Caicos Islanders. And those are two bills that the people who came to the consultations are excited by, particularly the real estate sector. And those things are in progress, and the expectation is that when I get back there, that I will progress those things. That's part of my racket. People have seen it. Like, there are real estate agents out there who are very excited and now a little bit disappointed that it's not being moved forward. And so, in terms of my racket, that when campaigning starts, they know that's already there. That's already ready to go, and then I'm going to be pushing it. So that's how I see my racket. I don't see my racket as a post on Instagram or a post on LinkedIn, or a sign. I see my racket as these tangible things that makes people's lives better, that gets people to the point where they're living their best lives. And they go, wait a minute, I went to that consultation. The minister was leading it. He was leading in a direction where I want to follow, that's going to make my life better. And it's going to allow me to move, make each day better than the day before. And I want to see him back there. That's the racket I want to run on. And so I didn't grow up in the social media world. I grew up a little bit before the internet. I was in university when the internet broke, so pulling out your camera doesn't come instinctively for me. A lot of times I go, wait a minute, I didn't take a picture. My phone can take a picture. But so I don't do that. That's not my style. My style is that when you look back and we have these conversations, you can go and say, you know what, the real estate and brokerage license moved forward because he was there. Floyd Seam actually said it. He said he brought it up in 2012 to that period, that administration, nothing happened. He brought it up in 2016 for that administration, nothing happened. And if I was the only minister that he brought it up to and moved it forward. For me, that's my racket. My racket is that the tangible things that when you touched on it, that I'm capable of being able to move it. When the last governor said, listen, we need to get vaccines, people vaccinated to this number, I was able to get that ticker to move. We need to get COVID to this number, I was able to get that ticker move. That's my racket. That's what I'm going to run on. Not about the pictures and everything, about the outcomes, about making people's lives better.
Yeah. You mentioned, I asked you about campaigning. The opposition party has now formally and publicly named its all-island candidates. Are there any in that number that give you cause for concern?
By making
the thing about it is that I treat everybody as being a threat and things like this. I don't for fun and for joking around. You may go and say, "Oh, our team is better than them," but I treat them as the fact that they could do well, because you don't know. A lot of the times people vote for different reasons. I mean, they may be motivated by the fact that they love the candidates, or they may be voting because they hate the candidates. And that's exactly. So we could go in there and do something where all of a sudden we're tripping into the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like you're losing as you're getting in, and all of a sudden so we're heading in the wrong direction, heading into to election day, and all of a sudden we hand it off to them. And so I don't go in there thinking, boy, my goodness, we could certainly kill them. I go in there treated as what can I do to ensure that I have no unforced errors, using a tennis term, that make sure that we shall keep going to the election date as strong as we possibly can, because we don't want anything to happen. I always look at the other side, and not just in this, is that they're smart also, and that they're going to find their feet at some point, and they may come out in the first couple of days of campaigning, start to look like amateurs, but they'll figure it out over time, and as they're going to become more and more comfortable. And so I'm not going to take it for granted. I want to beat them, but I recognize that they're good people, and they have supporters, and they're going to figure out their campaign, and they're going to bring it on strong. And our job is to make sure that we do the things that we can do and stay the better choice.
So are you saying that we will see an E.J. Saunders on the ballot?
No, I mean, Cheryl, I mean, to be frank, I know people, I don't like to go out there, you know, I like to show a bit of quiet confidence. I'm running again. I'm committed to running again. You know, and everybody what asks is that, you know, what are you going to do? I'm committed to running again. I'm committed to putting my name back up when there's a convention for leadership, and then I'm committed to trying to advance the country and move the country forward and leading the PNP and leading the country. I mean, there's no secret there. And but what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to be aggressive and try to run over people for it. I will wait my turn. But I'm running again. I'm running all island again. And when there's another leadership convention come up, I'm going to put my name forward.
I can take his leg.
I'm sure you want to take that.
No. Moving on.
I'm not afraid to say that. I mean, I know some people like, I mean, even Magnetic Media, I think, ran one time and basically said, the public was a little bit disappointed that I didn't claim it. Everyone that I didn't claim after my concession type speech that I didn't say that I wanted it. I mean, I don't think that's any secret. I think that I could make a good leader of the Turks and Caicos. I think that we can move a lot more agile. You know, because I think I've come from a completely different era.
But you did say here on First Edition that you would allow the delegates to speak.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I did say that. I
Yes.
mean, and that's my view. And even at the next convention, my view is that the delegates will speak with who they want. But what I said last time, I think people missed it, is that the party was at a point where when do you want the future to start? Okay, and I said the premier can obviously lead today because he's the premier, but the question is, do you want the future to start in 2025 of the party in the country, or do you want it to start in 2030? And that the delegates would speak, and delegates spoke and said, we're not prepared for the future to start. That's not a bad thing, you know, it's just that we're not prepared for it right now. But whenever they want, and I said the future meaning that the next generation to start, I'm prepared to lead that. And I'm not afraid to say that, and I think that you know, where I am right now strengthens me, doesn't weaken me.
Oh Lord.
You can say it. You know, I'm not afraid.
Ask the question?
No, I was just to say, definitely got less.
Make it a question, not a statement.
Okay. Well, do you think that? That's why you're here. Do you think that moving forward, a challenge for leadership is a more simple decision because there's less stakes involved? Obviously, the last time you were deputy premier and you held a cabinet portfolio, some may say as a result of that challenge, you no longer hold those positions. Do you feel now, because you no longer have that cabinet portfolio, that executive position, that it would just make sense now to continue to challenge for leadership, because what essentially is the risk?
Well, I mean, most of that is true, not all of it. I mean, it wasn't more of the risk. The fact is that, as I told people before, the premier was the premier of the Turks and Caicos. We've never had that before. Okay, we've had people challenge leadership when they're in the opposition, and we know that when the PDMs were in, one candidate was about to challenge the leader, but the candidate wasn't a minister.
Yes,
okay, so it wasn't a minister, and so it was unprecedented. So in that sense, so that was what it was, and so my view was more of that, and I've said it when I was on the last time on this show. There was a certain amount of delegates that wanted to see a change, and there was a candidate that they wanted to see that. And
we saw that the total amount of votes, right?
And I allowed that to happen. Okay, and the belief is that there are certain conventions and rules, and that says that if this happens, then particularly from a minister, that the minister will then have to go into the back bench, and I accept that. There's no debating that. Who's the premier of the Turks and Caicos? So yes, it certainly makes it easier. I'm saying is that the next time there's a convention coming up, I am putting my name into it, and I'm prepared to lead. And being here, I do believe, makes me stronger and not weaker.
Yeah, I've always wanted to ask you this. I probably have privately, but I'm going to ask you openly now.
This is so telling
What
today.
what makes the Honorable E.J. Saunders? How do you differentiate the Honorable E.J. Saunders from the Honorable N.B. Saunders? We've heard people say, you don't want your dad to help you or guide you. You want to stand on your own 2 feet. What are your differences, you think, between you and your dad?
Well, I mean,
politically.
The thing about it is my dad is a born politician, and someone, when I got fired, and then they were running it in the report in the weekly news, someone wrote, I think they think it was witty, by saying, E.J., they started by saying how someone said to a politician in the United States, you're no Ronald Reagan, and they wanted to add by saying, E.J., you're no Norman Saunders. Of course, I'm not going to be Norman Saunders. My dad's a born politician. My dad was in politics for 40 years. I wasn't even in it for 40 months. Okay? And some things my dad instinctively got. He's a very, very high IQ, bright guy, and he's comfortable doing a lot of things that I'm probably just learning at. But there's a couple of things. One, my dad didn't have him for guidance. I've got him for guidance.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so right off the top, I've got a much better coach than he would have had. I've learned, and I can see the decisions that he made, and the good that came out of it, and the bad that came out of it. People expect for my personality to be exactly like him. It's not going to be like him because I've seen what he went through, and my mom deserves better than that. I mean, I can't put my mom through what happened, what she went through, what happened with him. And so all of those things will shape my decisions. I am not going to be a certain way. But the fact is that I have him here. I have him here to say, to guide me and give me the coaching and everything. But I do want to show, and I tell people this, I don't want to be, it sounds crazy, I don't want to be Norman Saunders 2.0. I mean, I love him, and he's done all these great things. But I'm a part of my mom also, and there's Malcolm in me also. And so I bring all of those things, and my dad is strong in a lot of areas, but there are areas that you think that he can work on. And so all of those things that I can bring. But in terms of decision making, in terms of where we want to see the country go, I think that we're more alike than not alike. But the question just comes down to how we move forward on it. My dad, he may disagree with it, but I'm going to use what Oprah said about Barack Obama. My dad came up during a different time. He came up during a different time where the UK had us on grant and aid, and what he probably thought that he could push back on probably was limited. He could only push the fence a bit. But I grew up in a different era. I have the benefit of going away to school and competing with the people who are leading my peers who I went to school with are leading other countries, and they're leading them in the UK and stuff like that. And I see it differently, and what Oprah had said about Barack, and I said it a few times, because they said to her, why are you endorsing Barack when Jesse Jackson also ran and you never endorsed him? And she said that Jesse Jackson wanted to get to the White House, but he couldn't see himself in it because he grew up during the civil rights movement. Barack grew up outside of it, so he didn't see it as a limitation. And I'm not saying that my dad sees those things as a limitation. I'm saying I'm coming up during a different era. I'm coming up during a different era, and the way I see the world is shaped slightly different. But the most important thing is that I've got those things, and I've got a seasoned person like him who's phenomenally smart to say, you know what? You're sharpening your eye, and now you're becoming more polished. This is what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and so that's why I think that in some ways, if you look at me 40 years from now, you would see that with his guidance and everything, that I can achieve a lot more than what people think that my potential is right now. But in terms of differences, I would think that we're more alike in terms of how we have a quiet confidence. Well, he has a bit of a swagger. I mean,
And you don't?
The yellow
Yeah, he has a bit of a
You
swagger.
don't? You don't?
But I believe in 40 years. I mean, I think you'll probably see the same swagger. But I mean, he earned it. I mean, he was a phenomenal
Yeah.
cricket player, tennis player, musician. You know, he did a lot of things very well. And I think he earned it. And you know, but I'll try my best to keep up.
Yeah. And one of the major differences is he goes to church regularly.
As a matter of fact, I was in the Anglican church on Sunday, and I read in church on Sunday.
What?
Yeah.
They allowed you to read?
The Anglicans have put me down on their reading roster.
What are you trying to say? The Methodists have it?
Well, I told the Methodists that, but the Anglicans, tell you what happened. I said to them, I said, you know, I read in the Anglican church before. I went to an Anglican school. My grandmother was Anglican. And they said, well, we're going to put you down. And they put me down, and I showed up. And then they put me down again, and I showed up. Because what it does now, it says that I'm committed to it. You know, because and any church can do it. If they put me down, it means, hey, wait a minute, I've got to do this. Versus rolling out of bed and saying, you know, I'm tired today. But that said, though, you know, I've been attending the Anglican church probably more than the Methodist, but I'm Methodist, you know, and first and foremost, I'm Methodist, and so I'm still committed. So if you put me down at the reading roster, I'll be there too.
Okay.
I wasn't ready for that Methodist shade.
Hon.Saunders, you use the phrase a lot, living our best lives, and the man on the street is saying that's not so. He or she is saying, yes, we've had increases in salary, civil servants have had raises, but NIB has also increased, utility bills have increased, groceries have increased. What would you say is the current state of affairs in the TCI? And do you think your government is heading in the right direction?
The current state in the country, along what you just defined, is probably like how it is in most across the world. It seems to be a stubborn problem to be able to get the success of countries that are doing well, because there's some countries that are not doing well, to be trickled down to their people. Because in our particular case, and I'm going to pause that and go to Guyana. Guyana found oil, and then they're now starting to use the oil money to help out the citizens. And then Guyana is going to see that it's going to change, because what happens is that our success comes from tourism. And the reason why I use the difference between Guyana and here is that our success drives up the cost of living, because we're catering to a premium tourism market. They're coming in, they're buying homes, they got stamp duties up, you know, room rates and everything up. But those things, the negative side to it, drives up the cost for the people who live here versus someone who just found oil, and then you can now take that oil money and help it. The fact is that while the government is trying to reduce the cost of living, the cost of living is shooting up also, because the one thing that we cater to that improves the quality of life is also have the negative effect where there's not enough contractors out there, because they're all building villas and everything. There's not enough accommodation inventory for long-term stay for young people, because everybody now has their extra accommodations on their B&B short-term rental. So it's a lot more difficult. Now the way our government has approached it in the short term is to try to put in more social programs. So you can see that we help out senior citizens in terms of increasing the minimum they get. We put in child care services, nutrition programs, all those things. So those are social programs. I think when people say, though, that they're not feeling it, they want to see it in their wallet. They want to see hundreds of dollars more in their wallet, thousands of dollars at the end of the month more. And that comes through entrepreneurship. You know, you're going to pull, the fastest way to pull people up is to make them entrepreneurs, business people. And so what we need to do is that we need to create the environment that more and more Turks and Caicos Islanders become successful entrepreneurs. The people who don't want to go into entrepreneurship, who only want to be employees, what we do, it's like we did now. You raise the government salaries, government starts attracting the best talented people, the private sector will catch up. And those persons who are working will start to earn more. And I can guarantee you this year, because of what the government did last year with the government salaries, you'll see salaries start to rise. But we also need to keep a lid on the cost of living to make sure that as you're making more, you're not spending more. And so we have a Department of Trade that came under the Ministry of Finance They need to be stand up and be able to do a little bit more. We need to ensure that there's local manufacturing, so some things that you're buying abroad that you can now buy it here. I mean, we're looking into agricultural programs, so even food things that you'd be importing that you start to eat locally. And when you start to do those things, the costs start to go down. We have to do a deep dive into Fortis, and not a knock against Fortis, but I think we need to go to the Fortis board and wipe the whole slate clean and sit down and renegotiate a brand new agreement with Fortis to make sure that the cost of electricity isn't going through the roof, and bring down those things that keep pulling money out of your wallet as you make more. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, I think you made an excellent point when you talked about the cost of living ultimately going up because of the style of our economy with the high-end tourism. But I would be remiss if I didn't comment on the examples that you did make. You know, there are countries like Dubai and Singapore, and even European countries like the Northern European countries, the Western European countries like Switzerland and all these places, where the cost of living is incredibly high, but the salaries and the money, the opportunities presented, pay very, very well. Yeah. So there's a balance there. So my question would be, we were talking about the average Joe on the street. The opportunities obviously exist here for people to make money that matches the cost of living. We see people flocking here every day through illegal migration and legal migration. There are hundreds of people coming on the planes every year for very high paying jobs, and the second they get here, they're living in very nice long-term accommodations, they're driving very nice cars, and they're making very good salaries. And then we also see people moving here and taking advantage of entrepreneurship opportunities. One day they move here, the next day they got 10, 20 jet skis, they're a property manager here. My question is, we always say that the government needs to create these separate opportunities, like these Class B opportunities for locals, you know, government jobs, these little token opportunities so we can survive. How are we putting our people in position to take advantage of these high-paying, high-rewarding opportunities that already exist, that are being taken advantage of by other persons that aren't us?
Well, I mean, as I said to you before, I mean, in going back, I mean, one, I was going to say Switzerland and those are like white-collar sectors. So if I was in Silicon Valley, as an example, I would be doing phenomenally well because people with AI backgrounds are being paid seven figures. That's $1 million and more. They're recruiting people. So Switzerland and Bermuda and those places have a lot of white-collar jobs where people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars. But to answer your question, the issue is this, and I touched on it before. You have to go in there and say, because investors, when they come into the country, because a lot of times we lack capital, and so you go and say, man, if I could have 100 jet skis, let's make it more reasonable. If I could buy 20 jet skis, I would be able to do well. But you don't have the 20 jet skis. The people with the money come in, and they may pick you as a partner. What you need to do is this. You need to do the things that I was doing before I left the ministry, is change the business licensing ordinance that says we're going to discriminate in favor of Turks and Caicos Islanders, and then you need to go there on the backside of it, strengthen the minority shareholder rights, you know, so people don't go there and take advantage, even when you have a partner, to take advantage of their partner. And to be honest, you have to let the lawyers know. And I may say something that some lawyers may say, oh, that don't make any sense. But I believe that there are some lawyers here who tell the expats what to do to get around the rules. And I believe there should be penalties for that. I think there should be penalties for that. But to be honest, I think the lawyers should be like this. This is the country's rules.
Thank you.
If you advise your client or don't advise your client not to try to break them, you're going to get penalized.
I agree.
And those are the things you have to look at. I'm telling you, they may be surprised, but I've seen it many, many times. You're in a deal, someone comes and you say, you know that's not what was discussed. And then they sit back and they look at you, well, my legal advisor says that. And then I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I am a minister in government. I'm a minister in government. You're telling me this is what your legal advisor advised you. You know it's wrong. I know it's wrong.
Of course.
You think that I'm not gonna plug that hole.
Yes. And if you miss it, it's on you.
So my thing is that's how you fix it. You change the business licensing ordinance in favor of Turks and Caicos Islanders. You implement minority shareholder rights, and you strengthen them up to say, if you take advantage of the minority shareholder, if you abuse them, you're going to have penalties to pay for the partners. And the people who advise you, who don't advise you, And what I mean, don't advise you, if you walk in there with some crazy, stupid ideas, saying, how can I break the law, and the law, and your legal person says, well, I think you can do it this way, you're going to get penalized. And be honest, and that's my view. I think the Bar Council should be put on notice, because a lot of them, you say it, you've seen it, I have seen it, you speak with local lawyers, they've seen it, but the Bar Council should be put on notice to say, you've got some lawyers who are advising people to do things that are against this, because even if they look at the law and go, we think we can get around it legally, you know what the spirit of the law is trying to achieve. You know it.
Illegal, maybe no, but immoral for sure.
Exactly. And so my view is that there are ways to get fixed. It's going to get fixed. Because I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've articulated it, and my view is that just like how we knew that when we came here we were going to fix the real estate licensing, that there are some things relating to in the legal area, legal fraternity, that we need to fix, because those things will then allow them to ensure that when Turks and Caicos entrepreneurs come, they're not taken advantage of.
Hon.Saunders, we're out of time, but as always, we always want you for more than an hour. And so, since Shivago caused you to have a loss of time, we're going to invite you back at your convenience sometime later on. It's been great talking.
What about these hard-hitting questions you say Shivago had? Like Shivago, whenever Shivago gets in front of me, he goes...
Eli wasn't well. I got thrown off this
Every time Shivago gets in front of me, he apologizes for not having these hard-hitting
No. I need some good karma on me today, so I can't do that today.
We want to thank you so much.
I just want you to know, #2 Patriots fan over here. Like, I'm the #1, but he's the #2.
Oh, yeah?
Never in my life. How about them boys? Anyway.
So thank you so much, Honorable E.J. Saunders. It's always a pleasure to have you. We're wishing you all the very best in all your future endeavors. We know you'll do well. And so we wish you well. This has been First Edition with the Honorable E.J. Saunders. I'm Cheryl Ann Forman.
And I'm Shivago Jolly.